Welcome back to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of January 31st, 2023. This meeting is being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel, so you may watch the proceedings either by joining the meeting at the estimated time of the item that you're interested in, which can be found on our website, or by watching our YouTube channel. And we are going to resume this afternoon's schedule with public meeting item number 6. And I will turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation, to take us through the remaining public meeting agenda.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll start this afternoon session with public meeting item number 6, LPC 22-06681, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 5190, lot 32. 362 East 25th Street in the East 25th Street Historic District. This is a Renaissance Revival style row house designed by Gluecroft and Gluecroft, built circa 1909 to 12, and the application is to replace a door. This was last presented at the public hearing of April 26, 2022, and no action was taken at that time. The staff will present the slides, and the owner is here for a statement as well after we open the proceedings.
Thanks. Let's open the proceedings so we have a seamless transition. Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so now at the right time, the applicants are able to speak.
Jared, you can go ahead if you'd like to go through the slide.
Oh, okay, fine. Perfect. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jared Knowles of the Preservation staff. This application, as Corey said, was last presented at the public hearing of April 26, 2022. Excuse me. The proposal was to remove a non-historic single-leaf door, shown here, and to install within the existing opening a new single-leaf 4-panel fiberglass door featuring a segmentally arch-headed beveled glass window. You'll also notice the surround to this door. The proposal was to install insulation and metal cladding over the framing of the door surround, which was installed to reduce the historic door opening from historic paired doors to the single leaf door. A quick study of that photo and of this historic district map show that both sides of the block are characterized by houses that are set back from the sidewalk approximately 10 to 12 feet and fronted by gardens. So this just shows the tax photo where historically they repaired doors, and the time of designation there was a single door. And these are existing condition photographs. You can see there are gaps in between the door, and it's in deteriorated condition. Okay, and so in the middle was what you saw the last time, which was this 4-panel door with beveled glass. The proposal has been modified to make it a single light of glass, and also to add some trim detail to the surround as shown. Well, here's a sample of the door and of its painted finish. And this shows the trim work that's been added to the surround. So Terry Simmons, whose mother owns the property, is here to make a statement.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Please go
Hi.
ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, the committee, and commissioners. As stated that we did present the door the last time in April, and I did go over with my contractor and about the details that the commissioners wanted for the door to be placed in. As you can see, the brown door is what I asked them to put so you can see the detail clearer than in black, because in black you cannot see the trimmings that's going around the door as the framework as the commissioner stated the last time, because the last time you just saw the animated flat black around the door where I couldn't speak because I was having difficulties getting through. As you can see, Jared, could you put it to the sample part, please? Yes. Okay, so that's the door that I would like to place in to what we have right now. The sample on the bottom is the painted, finished look of the door that the commissioners asked for the last time. The door, yes, is fiberglass. However, when you look at the door, the painted finish, it looks wood. If you stand by my gate and you look at the door, it looks like wood. The only way you can tell that this is fiberglass is if you actually walk up and touch it from a distance. I mean, this is a beautiful door. Is, you know, the color, the accents with my home, it brings out, to me, it will bring out my home more. The door that we have, the previous condition of that door right now, as you can see, if you can go back, he showed, you know, the siding. It's pulling up. It's pulling up. The inside, see the gap on the inside of my door right there. We're losing so much energy, so much heat that the energy, Con Edison asked if we had other people in our home because of the tremendous rate of our gas going up with the lifts on the side also. Right now, that door that's being shown is, the door right now is worse than what's being shown right now, you know. And the reason why I would like to please present this door as a change, as also the security of my home for my mother and stuff, because we have 3 big trees in front of our house. My next door neighbor has a tree, the other side has a tree, another tree. The block is very dark at night, very dark. I spoke to the block association about it, about lighting and things of that nature, where people come on the block and they squat, they sit in the car and stuff like that. I do have a concern of security with the door. So if it's possible, please, can you just take a look? Like I said, the door looks wood once it's painted. And from last time that we spoke, I believe y'all said that y'all did approve fiberglass in other areas. And thank you for me explaining.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, I don't see any questions. Yes, Commissioner Lutfi, please go ahead.
Do we approve fiberglass doors?
So, Corey, I'll let you answer that if you can.
Well, it's not often requested. I mean, we've certainly approved fiberglass as an alternative to wood for windows for different buildings, provided they have a painted finish that still recalls the painted finish that would go on wood and that the details are commensurate, as have we done for metal and metal clad wood. So I think in that context, we have certainly approved alternative materials for doors and windows on other projects.
Yeah, I think I can also remember an application in Sunnyside where we approved a fiberglass door. And as you said, certainly we have as an alternative material for windows. Are there any questions about the panning around the door and what the detail of that looks like?
Yes.
Okay, can Jared, maybe you can describe that again? So
Sure. So it's what they're doing is the existing door surround, the framing is being insulated and then clad with aluminum, and then detailed trim work is being added on top and all be painted black.
So sort of like with a window, when you insert an aluminum window within a wood frame, it's often panned over with a panning that can have a profile or detail, but I think and these drawings actually show the actual profiles.
Yes.
Can we go to slide 6? I think that may show the rendering. And maybe the Ms. Simmons could confirm, but it, you know, according to this drawing, it appears that whereas on the left, you have these sort of recessed conditions that fill in the gap between the door and its jamb and then the stone, both, you know, to the sides and above. And the proposal, as shown in the middle, is to kind of cover those recesses and finish that out as a flat surround.
Well, the middle one was what we showed before. Jared, could you go to the brown door?
Sure.
Right. So that's how the door will fit into the spot. On both sides of my door has an indentation of the cladding, which will no longer, it will come forward on like how it is on the brown door, but it'll still be cladding like that and on the top, but it will not be going in.
Okay, so it's sort of boxing it out, but with something that has more profile than you previously showed. It has
Right,
sort of
right.
edging. Okay, Commissioner Shamir Barron.
So I may have missed it, but the original, so I want to understand why there's not a proposal to do the following, which is a double door, which is the original. If it is the reason here to not have to replace the door, but to just finish the door, or has it been considered, the double door been considered, or is that not acceptable here?
Well, I think they're keeping the entire enfrainment and just swapping out the operable portion of the door.
But it sounds like they're not keeping it. Sounds like they're
They're covering
finishing
it, but keeping it.
Right. And can we ask the applicant, is it all right to, I mean, I realize that
Sure.
that's not what's being proposed, but
Yeah.
has the applicant considered a double door in order to sort of do away with this whole overdone, you know, this frame that currently exists and you're wanting to reclad?
I didn't want to place back a double door, as I stated, you know, with the security of the home. You know, my mother and my aunt is here, and they both are 80-something years old. When I go to work, and I want to feel secure that they're okay. Like I stated, there's so many trees on the block. A lot of people come and squat on the block, park on the block, and it's very dark, you know. Back in the days, not recently, but back in the days, there were a lot of robberies, you know. To tell you the honest to God truth, you know, I just don't feel secure with double door.
Well, why is a double door more, I mean, double door with glass, but
Right.
But a solid double door or something that takes up, where the door takes up the dimension of the opening. So you're not having to fill it with a surround or accept the surround that's there, which is not great.
Well, at the time also, I don't have the money. That's extra money to tear all that down to place the double doors in also.
Right. I mean, I don't know about that. You know, I don't know what the cost of either one of these options is, and it's not my place to say. But okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think we can move to our discussion. And I'll just note, the Historic Districts Council sent us a letter, which was shared with you all before today. And, you know, we had a discussion about this door last time, and as we discussed, it's sort of like installing a window and a modified opening, right? The sort of door opening is modified because they are keeping the enfrainment, and we can't compel them to replace the enfrainment if they're not proposing to replace it. So it's really swapping out a single door for a single door and then considering what do you do with the enframement, if anything. And so, and there was discussion last time about the fiberglass material, and the applicant has presented that this is set well back from the street, and with the right finish, the change in material wouldn't be perceptible, and we certainly have approved fiberglass in other, as an alternative material in other instances. And the one thing I would say about this particular historic district is that there is, when you walk on this street, you are, and many doors are replaced. And despite the door replacements, there is a striking consistency that is really derived from the masonry bowed facades and the very uniform row. And so I would say that the existing single doors that have been installed in other houses along both sides of the street did not diminish the sense of place, that in a way that precluded designation. We still found it to be very strong in terms of its sense of place, and that there is a variety of door types on the street. So I think this is we sort of worked through this discussion last time. I think we were mixed on it. The applicant has come back today with a proposal to do a different kind of cladding around the existing enframement that would introduce more profiles than was previously shown. And in our comments, can focus on both the door as well as the cladding. So we'll begin the discussion. Commissioner Chapin, I think the last time you saw this, you were not concerned that the single door would set a precedent or be inappropriate, but given that it's operating within the existing enframement. But you did ask them to study the profiles and work on those details. So if you'd like to start this discussion, that would be great.
Okay. I think it's always a little disappointing not to have a wooden door. At the same time, if the appearance of the door can really satisfactorily, represent an appearance that is similar to the wood, I think it can be approved. And it appears that the applicant has worked on the panning of the front, and also with their producer of the door. And also, from what was said, they have done further work on the surround, which was also an issue. So I don't think, given that most of the doors on the block seem to be single doors, unless, as Adi was hoping, it could actually be less costly or more efficient in terms of the interior concerns they had about warmth and also security. If a double door could have obviated a lot of the work on the surround, I'm not so sure it wouldn't have been just as inexpensive. But I think that this is something I could see as certainly as appropriate, the single door. And as long as the detailing adequately can appear to be wood, I think I could support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Commissioner Goldblum, I think you were of a similar mind last time and felt that if the details could be refined, that you could find the door appropriate, and you specifically talked about adding decorative trim or trying to minimize the inset of the door by having a thinner frame around it. So I'm not sure if these details are in the direction you were thinking, but
Yeah.
I think that the black door is better, and the detailing is better. I would suggest the applicant work with staff on a couple of things. The same exact series of door, it's Anderson Renewal Signet fiberglass doors. It comes in a style that's called 420, which does not have the round top. Since the original doors did not have the round top, it has the same amount of glass. There should be no security issue. I would suggest that they look with that with the staff. And also, in my experience, things that are wood grain with an embossed texture usually don't look very good. And the same series, again, no additional cost, you can get them smooth. So you don't have to have the wood grain. So I would say that the flat, ungrained 420 series is better than the one with the arched top. It's more similar to what was there. And also, I would suggest the applicant work with the staff to go to the Dykes molding catalog, pull out a few moldings and dress it up. It'll cost 55 cents and it'll look a lot better.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Commissioner Devonshire, I think you were of similar mind last time as well.
I agree 100% with Commissioner Goldblum's recommendation / requirement. My own security, if I wanted a secure door, it wouldn't be a plastic one, it would be a wood one. But that's another, that's a security issue, not an LPC issue. But I agree completely about the embossed graining. It's unsightly. It actually makes it look like a door that hasn't been maintained. I think it needs to be a smooth finish.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Chen, I'm not sure you were actually here last time.
I don't think I heard it the first time, but if we are going to approve the case, I think you should follow the two Michael suggestions.
Okay. All right, and Commissioner Bland, I think you were more concerned about the fiberglass material. Oops, oh, he's gone. Okay. So Commissioner Lutfi, you also, have concerns about the fiberglass.
I am in complete agreement with what's been said about get rid of that faux grain and work with the staff on the details of the trim and, change the pick the door that Michael suggested. And I'm on board.
Okay. Right, Commissioner Jefferson.
I'm on board with Michael's suggestion.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson.
Same here.
All right, and Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Yes, I do as well agree.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus to do an approval with modifications. Commissioner Goldblum, would you want to do that motion since the recommendations came from you?
Sure. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. So regarding 362 East 25th Street in the East 25th Street Historic District, the application is to replace a door. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the East 25th Street Historic District, and I recommend approval with modifications. Finding that the paired wood and glass doors were removed and single doors surrounded by wood infill were installed prior to designation of the historic district. Therefore, the proposed work will not eliminate any significant architectural or historic features. But the presence of a single leaf painted and paneled fiberglass door featuring clear glass will recall some aspects of historic doors and will be in keeping with alterations that have occurred over time on this and other entrances at houses in the row and on the block, and that the black painted finish, the proposed door and cladding at the surround will harmonize with the materials and style of the house, will not call attention to itself in the streetscape. And I recommend that the applicant work with the staff to, number one, change the style of the door to a flat topped glass door instead of the arch topped glass, similar to style 420 in Anderson. And that they work with the staff to eliminate the textured finish and go with smooth finish instead. And number 3, to explore with staff appropriate, inexpensive painted wood trim that's available for enhancing the overall suitability of the installation.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
I second.
Thank you. And John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
aye,
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
None in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
All right, so that's approved with some modifications. So please continue to work with the staff, and we'll now move to the next public meeting item.
Thank you very much, commissioners and
Thank
staff.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day. Thank you.
You too.
All right, next item is public meeting item number 7, LPC 23-05725. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 553, lot 9, 396 6th Avenue in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a commercial building built in 1935 and altered in 1950. The application is to amend an approval under LPC 22-06991 to install signage. We'll turn it over to the applicant to present the revisions after we open the proceedings.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. So Commissioner Devonshire, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the applicants may speak.
Jackie, you now have control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen. Perfect. And you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. You're still unmuted, so please unmute. I'm sorry, you're muted, so please unmute, state your name for the record, and maybe again. Jackie, are you able to unmute? Why don't I take it back over and let you unmute yourself? Jackie, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm having,
Yes, you can.
sorry about
Great.
that. I'm having
Okay.
technical difficulties. Okay, my apologies.
Okay, I'm
Let
gonna
me get
give
back
this.
to the beginning.
I'm gonna give this back to you. Please click on your screen.
Oh, thank you.
And please state your name for the record. You may begin.
Okay, hello, commissioners and Landmark staff. Thank you for hearing our application today. My name is Jackie Purdue-Vallon, preservation consultant on the project. Can everyone hear and see me? Just checking.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, because I can only see one person at a time. I don't know why. I can't fix it now. So in any case, as already stated, you last saw this project, 936 Avenue of the Americas, at the public hearing on October 25th, 2022. At that time, commissioners approved the installation of pin-mounted halo-lit signage in a slightly reduced size than what was originally proposed. Commissioners also stipulated that the blue backer panel that was proposed be eliminated from the design. We're here today to ask commissioners to reconsider that backer panel, as the design team feels it's necessary to hide previous damage to the wall and to eliminate the need to drill numerous new holes in order to install new signs. So just a refresher, this is 936 Avenue of the Americas, a 2-story commercial structure in Greenwich Village Historic District. It stands on the southeast corner of 6th and West 8th Street. Here it is in its existing condition. The photo on the left is the north elevation on West 8th Street. The center photo is its chamfered corner that features a double height glazed opening. And the photo on the right is its east elevation on 6th Avenue. West elevation, sorry. A permit was issued for a temporary installation of the banners that you see in these photos. And here's a close-up photo of what 6th Avenue looks like without the banner. You can see the numerous holes that were left behind by previous generations of sign installations. And this is a close-up photo of the wall on West 8th Street. Again, you can see the numerous holes. Now, just to give you background on how the condition got the way it is, in 1980, the commission approved a second story on this building, which had been a one-story building, as well as B. Dalton bookseller signage that caused these numerous penetrations. They also approved at the same time painting the building this dark red color. In 2010, the commission approved new signs for Barnes & Noble, which included the installation of the backer panel, the previous backer panel that was there. In 2013, the commission approved new signage again at these locations, this time reusing those sign bands that were left over when Barnes & Noble moved out. And here's that approval from 2013 with the green and white TD Bank signs installed, excuse me, using the leftover Barnes & Noble panels. The tenant never moved in, and those TD Bank signs were never actually installed. And the landlord subsequently removed the panels that were left over from the Barnes & Noble, at which point those panels lost their grandfathered status. Here on the left is the signage proposal you saw on October 25th for the West 8th Street elevation. And on the right, at that time, the backer panel was shown in a dark blue color with dimensions of 20 foot 6 inches by 6 feet tall. On the right is the current proposal, showing a sign band of the same size, but in the same dark brick red color that the commission approved on the building in 1980, which is Pratt & Lambert Sequoia, so that the panel will blend with the facade. Incidentally, the size of the letters on these proposed signs has also been reduced by 2 inches per commissioner comments from the last hearing. So the size of the letters will now vary from about 25 inches to 28 inches tall. And here's the 6th Avenue view. Here on the left is the signage proposal you saw on October 25th. Again, at that time, the backer panel was shown in a dark blue color with dimensions of 20 foot 6 inches by 6 feet tall. I'm sorry, yeah, 20 foot 6. On the right is the current proposal showing the sign band in the same size, but in that same dark red color again. And again, with the reduced size of the pin mounted letters as commissioners requested. Here's the details showing that sign as proposed on October 25th. And here's the detailed drawings for the proposed sign showing the dark red sequoia color on the backer panel so that it will blend with the facade. Now, I would just like to briefly remind commissioners of streetscape context for this building. These photos are the east side of 6th Avenue to the north and south of our building. You'll note that Starbucks, go back. The Starbucks sign here on the same block, which has a larger backer panel, which is closer down to the sidewalk. And here across the street, the west side of 6th Avenue, opposite our building, you can also see a few very large backer panels. And here again, just to highlight a few where the sizes range from 26 to 54 feet tall for backer panels to 14 to 48 feet long. And here's some photo montages showing what the sign would look like with the sequoia color for the backer panel so that it blends with the facade. We think that showing this, again, we're showing the backer panel at the same size as previously presented, so that it will, again, fully cover those holes in the facade, numerous holes that I showed you earlier in the presentation. This is the 6th Avenue elevation and showing you the proposal from farther away at a distance. And that's it. That's our presentation. I welcome your comments and questions.
Great, thank you. All right, commissioners, do we have any questions on this? All right, and I know the letters have been reduced from the previous approval. Has the depth of them stayed the same?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so commissioners, if there are no other questions, we'll move to our discussion. I'll note Historic Districts Council did send a letter about this revised proposal, which was shared with you, and I'm sending you all a request to unmute so that we can move to our discussion. So, as has been presented, the image on the left is what was proposed last year, and at that time there were concerns about the overwhelming nature of the design, and I think a lot of that discussion came from the contrast in colors and size of the letters, but we did recognize that the second floor was added under a commission approval, and that there'd been a history of signs, including from that first approval, in this sort of blank zone. And the commercial nature of 6th Avenue. So we approved just sort of eliminating the blue backer panel and just doing pin mounted letters. And the applicant is back today asking us to reconsider the backer panel, and now proposing a color that would blend away with the background. In addition, the letters would be reduced in height per the prior approval. So given that the sign is a different color now, I think we can look at it and have a discussion about whether it detracts from the streetscape. So I think, one can consider the proportion of the sign relative to the blank wall and relative to the other signs and character of 6th Avenue. And so let's begin that discussion. Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you like to start this one?
Well, I understand. I think I agree with what you were saying, in that if the issue that the applicant is presenting is one of a degraded surface that we might see, and that it can be improved by being able to do something about that. I mean, I suppose that's a better approach, and I could find it appropriate.
Yeah, and I do think the color change does help it to read more as
it
a
does.
background and
Yeah.
not as like a sign so I think it helps sort of reduce the apparent size of it as well.
I agree. Mhm.
All right, Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think that it is appropriate. I think in the context of other signage in this area and the size of the building, that it is not out of scale, and with the change in color, that's helping it to recede further into the background. So, I think it's appropriate for the context of the streetscape.
Commissioner Goldblum?
I reluctantly agree. I mean, it's appropriate by the definitions that we use, but it sure isn't helping Greenwich Village Historic District much. So I can find it appropriate.
Commissioner Devonshire?
I think it's appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Ever since they changed the background color, it's less contrast but I agree with Michael's comment.
Okay, Commissioner Commissioner Lutfi?
I think it makes sense. They reduce the size of the letters, the background color blends. I would like to recommend, it might not be within our purview, that line in the middle, that is the blue background, also have the same color background, so that so this way the facade of the building, like color wise, is completely blended.
That's what it is.
No, it's blue. The sign in the middle,
behind the glass.
behind the glass.
Oh,
If you look at, it just doesn't it's kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And I think I saw somewhere else a TD Bank sign as an example. where they had a sign in the window. All the signs were exactly the same. Everything facing outward looks the same. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, it doesn't really bother me because it's an interior sign and it's in a glass vertical sort of stripe in the design of the building. So I think that for me, the reason I think the backer panel works is because it reads as part of the masonry and this is glass. But you know, if others think that they should be consistent, I'm open to that too. Commissioner Jefferson.
Could I just say something on
Yeah.
page 24? I'm guessing we must have approved this too. That's what I was talking about. Same thing. Same color.
Yeah.
I think what the issue is that green is their brand, TD Bank, and I think blue is the brand for Spectrum, if I'm
I
not
think that's
mistaken.
it.
So that's
Mhm.
why they're trying to keep some blue in, I suspect.
Mhm.
I would think so.
That is, it's not the same, but in the case of TD Bank, they have their brand color.
Right. So since they're giving up their brand color, I think they'd like to keep it in the window if possible. But we can hear what others think. Commissioner Jefferson?
Yeah, I think their solution is appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate and I don't mind the sign with the blue back in the window. That's fine.
Okay. All right, so I think we can move to approve this. Commissioner Shamir Baron, would you make the motion?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 2305725 936 6th Avenue, Greenwich Village Historic District, a commercial building built in 1935 and altered in 1950, the applications to amend an approval under LPC 220699 to install signage. I note that the 396 6th Avenue is not one of the buildings for which the Greenwich Village Historic District was designated, and I recommend approval, finding that the work will not conceal or eliminate any special architectural features, that the placement, materials, and halo-lit illumination of the lettering and logo are consistent with such aspects of signage typically found at 20th century commercial buildings in this historic district and with previous approvals for signage at the building, that the installation does not include exposed conduit or junction boxes, that the presence of a backer panel finished to match the surrounding painted masonry will minimize necessary penetrations for the new sign and help unify the appearance of the facade while receding from view, and that 6th Avenue is a highly commercial thoroughfare, and that the presence of signage at the second story will be compatible with its context and will not detract from the streetscape views.
Thank you. Right, Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public meeting item number 8, LPC 22-11159, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 587, lot 53, 43 Barrow Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a federal style row house built in 1828. The application is to construct a rooftop addition, alter the facade, and excavate the cellar. This was last presented at the public hearing of December 13th, 2022. No action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. All right, Commissioner Devonshire, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
So second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Right, so the proceedings are open and the applicant may present.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone can hear me. This is John Gordon, Sook Design Group.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us today. Yeah, we're coming back to address the comments that the commission gave us on December 13th. So we put on the cover the comments we were given. We initially had proposed to change the lintels on the facade over the windows to be more projected, similar to the neighboring house, but that was not the preference of the commissioners. So we removed that and we're going to stay with the flat lintels over the windows. Second is the on the additional floor to reduce visibility from the Barrow Street side. We've changed the overall configuration of the stair bulkhead to be very consistent with the existing stair bulkhead. We have a sloped plane to the front of it, which helps reduce its visibility over the neighboring house, which is shorter, which you can see there on the left side. And so that was our strategy to overall reduce the bulk and push it back. And then as far as the HVAC equipment, which we'll get to, it's in the back. We've removed the enclosing structure around them and changed compressors to be smaller compressors. And then as far as the material of the additional floor, we had proposed before to have like a stucco and stucco wall, and we also had a pitched roof. We've changed that to be a flat roof and a standing seam metal panel to help differentiate the new portion, a new proposal from the existing structure. And we've also offset, which we'll see in later slides, the side, so it's not in plane with the wall below. So that gives a little bit of a relief there. And then the last comment was about the parapet in the rear. We were proposing to extend the rear facade up to give a parapet with railing, but we've taken that off and just proposing a glass railing instead to keep the volume and bulk similar to what's there. So proceed to the next. So this is presenting the front facade. This is the previous proposed from December 13th, and we have our proposal now, where you can see the standing seam material instead of the stucco. And we've also adjusted the chimneys to be a little bit more masonry and a little less of the metal pipe for extending the chimneys, which are required to do by DOB code. And then moving to the rear facade, again, the changes, we removed the stucco and the pitched roof. We have a flat roof and standing seam metal. The parapet is not extended, and we have a glass railing. So the overall volume is generally the same, and the HVAC equipment is here with no enclosure around it. Moving to the axonometrics, showing proposed previously and current proposal, you can see this gives a better idea of how the volume has been shifted over here to have less volume facing this lower house on this side, and we'll see shortly in the visibility. And so this is treated as sort of like two blocks. So then there's a rendered version of that with the standing seam, and you can see the pitched roof there over the stair. And then same axonometrics from the rear side now. So you can see the change in material. And now this is a better side where you can see we had the brick wall just extended up to the side. We've offset that now and changed materials to really differentiate between the existing brick wall below and the bulkhead, stair bulkhead above. And then you can see the glass railing around for protection there. And moving, that's the rendered version of the same view, sort of bird's eye view. And then overall roof plan showing the two blocks. This is the pitched roof over the stair bulkhead, and then the block for the penthouse room. HVAC equipment here and glass railing in the back. Views when you're standing on the front terrace of the materials. And then this is the existing section showing the sight line, and then moving to, this is what we had proposed last time, the visibility. So you can see this in section, blue areas of the proposed changes to the building. And then the proposal now with the sloped stair bulkhead on this roof, which we saw in those axonometrics. And we also included another section showing it section through the additional room next to the stair bulkhead. So it's outside of the visibility line from across the street. Moving to the angles, just to remind everyone, this is the front facade, the veiling angle from the side, which is located in location B, which is here. And then from 7th Avenue, just to remind everyone, the block is cut off by 7th Avenue South, and that view here is view C is from this point. And we had revised the mock-up to show the change in shape. So those are the views. The forward pieces are the chimneys. And then that's the view before the mock-up with the current mock-up, and then rendered in, and you can see this is sloped back, pushing the volume back with that sloped bulkhead. Moving to the view from 7th Avenue South, we just outlined the building in context, so it's really hard to pick it out otherwise because of all the different things going on. But you can see the existing stair bulkhead, and just using that shape as our influence line for this new stair bulkhead. And so that's the rendered view from that angle with the sloped back. We've offset, like I said, from the brick wall back, and we've changed the materials and the glass railing. So the overall volume of the original house is well maintained. And then just presenting the materials again, close up on the lintel that's there, standing seam metal. And just close with the final rendering of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, do we have any questions? Right, I don't see any, but I actually did have one. Can you just, and I think that the idea of exploring a flat roof maybe came from me, but because I was thinking of it, could it be flat from the lowest points? And I just wonder, is the height of this roof at the lowest points of the previous previously proposed addition, or at the high point? And can you let us know what the floor to ceiling and roof height is? Yeah,
I can go back to the sections. Basically when you have occupiable space like that, the minimum should be this one. The minimum ceiling height is 8 feet. So we did the bare minimum that we could do. And these days with energy code, roof structures have to be really thick to get all the insulation they need on them. So we try to squeeze it as tight as we could. So the overall is 9'6". So in comparison, It is a little bit taller in the pitched, but it's not much. It's very close, very similar.
okay. All right, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson, just unmute.
I've been talking all this time to myself.
There you go.
The fireplace flue, there's metal and brick, and the brick seems so heavy. Why extend the brick? Why not just keep the metal flue up? Why that change?
There's been a lot of debate about that, and people have had different opinions. We did propose at one point to just extend the metal flues only and not the brick, and then other opinions were to extend the brick all the way up and not do the metal. So in this proposal, we kind of did half and half to try to appease both sides, but it's a debate.
Yeah, if you go to the perspective that you showed, the angle view, next one, that one.
Yeah.
It's very, it's just, if it was just the geometry of the addition, it would just be right. Just a comment.
All right, other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions. I will note that the Historic Districts Council and Village Preservation submitted letters, which were shared with the commissioners in advance of today's public meeting, and we'll begin our discussion now. So commissioners, I'm sending you a request to unmute. And so this is a proposal for a rooftop addition and some excavation that we saw last time. And I think that The commission recognized the very tight lot and I think was open to trying to find a rooftop addition that would be visible and appropriate. And we asked the applicants to try to set it back more on various sides. We also asked the applicants to consider breaking up the mass of the different parts, the stair bulkhead versus the occupiable space. We also asked them to explore raising the masonry of the chimney and relocating the mechanical equipment. There were also some concerns about the potential impact on a tree, I believe, from the excavation. So there were a number of questions, mostly having to do with figuring out a way to find a less visible addition to be appropriate. And so the applicant has explored some of those suggestions and has a revised proposal before us today. So let's talk this through and see where we go on this. Okay, Commissioner Gustafson, would you like to start this one?
Sure. We do often allow a minimal amount of visibility for rooftop additions. However, for me, this is still, even with all of the effort, and I do appreciate a lot of effort has gone into this, but even with all of that effort, it is far too visible from several angles. So I don't think it's appropriate as it stands. I also tend to agree with Commissioner Jefferson if he was suggesting that perhaps better to see the metal than the brick on the chimneys. But I think I don't know whether any more work could achieve their goal, but it's far too visible for my liking.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Thanks. It's a tricky situation because it's kind of a double whammy. One is that it's an important, very old building by our standards, federal style, a little bit, tiny bit late. So wants not to have, on the one hand, a visible, but certainly not an overwhelming or heavy, big addition, if at all. And yet the other side of the whammy is that the 7th Avenue cut is of kind of a very kind of scarring, you could say, to the history, to that very same history we might be trying to protect in acknowledging the kind of the presence of the very old 1828 building. So in both ways, it makes it difficult for this project to even be visible by the standards that we would typically permit. I think you might have been onto something, Chair Carroll, when you said that likely the intention, yours and others, when we agreed that that a flattening of the roof might help here. The idea was that it would be at the kind of the lowest before the roof dimension, and it feels almost much bigger. So yes, it's pushed off to one side of the building, slightly pushed away from the front of the street face, and yet I have to agree with Commissioner Gustafson. It is still too big in the abstract. It is too big, but as seen from 7th Avenue, particularly, way too big. And I don't know that there's anything that can be done to sort of make it considerably less visible from that vantage, but maybe lowering it to some, even though they've said that was the minimal ceiling height. I, though, am in support of brick rather than the other chimneys.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, it's a difficult problem because putting anything on top of a federal building in a situation with a lot of other small buildings means it's by nature almost going to be somewhat visible from some aspect. I'm not troubled by the chimneys. And I think that the efforts they've made to reduce the visibility and follow our other directions regarding things like the materials and setting it back and so forth have really improved the situation a very great deal. I was just looking at the aerial and I noted that there is, in fact, so I was wondering, are there any other, rooftop accretions? I see another one on Barrow Street. I don't know how visible that is and whether the commission approved it. But I kind of, there's some other rooftop accretions. That's actually an addition, that I saw. The other ones are just, more minor things. With the changes that they've made, I'm somewhat inclined to approve this, even though it is, of course, in the one particular shot, really visible. I think it's only from one direction that I really think it's really off Barrow Street that I think it's so that it looks the most visible from my perspective. Anyway, I am inclined to support it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I think, just mute myself there. I think I'm with the what appears to be the majority in finding this to be too darn bulky. I think that there have been cases that I recall in the past where applicants just happened to buy a particularly visible parcel that has perhaps more limitations than parcels or buildings that are nestled in different locations that make what would seem to be a common approval not okay in that particular situation. And I think this is one of them. I think the visibility from 6th Avenue is extreme and significant. And I think that the visibility from Barrow is significant. And it's really, it's significant because the house is so small. You can't set it back that much more. And it reminds me of this project that we saw recently in another tiny little village townhouse by Stephen Harris, where we did a visible rooftop addition. But there was something about that one where you also had like a little garage next to it or something, a little outbuilding. And it was visible, but there was something about it that was light and deferent to the structure and not encumbering that this seems to not share. And I don't know, I mean, certainly the presence of those visible air conditioners from the avenue is just a non-starter for me. I think the tall chimneys per se are not offensive to me, or they don't seem inappropriate. One sees that occasionally, but I think that the weightiness, the bulkiness of it relative to this small, delicate building is just, it just seems wrong to me. So I can't approve it either.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Devonshire?
I'm in that same camp. With regard to the chimneys, historically, I think, and certainly around the village, you see the extensions being done with the metal, and so I'm okay with that. But I think Michael hit the nail on the head. There are some sites, there are some locations that have an unfortunate situation in that anything that gets added to them is going to be more highly visible. And this is a very delicate, small house. And so what's being proposed for the top of this just looks massive and out of place. And I think they need to continue to rework it so that it's not so large, not so bulky, not so visible.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
I think, it's quite clear that we had to defer to the majority, and there simply is not enough vote here today to approve the project.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I mean, this unfortunately, and I really do think the applicant has done their best. Unfortunately, this photo kind of tells it all. From this vantage point, it's just too much bulk and, you know, too many things that we're seeing as well, you know, individually and in bulk. So I concur.
Okay, so including the glass railing, I think from this view as well, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think the glass railing doesn't work.
All right, Commissioner Jefferson.
Well, I view this project from the point of view that you have the front facade and then you have the scar in the back. And this is not harmonious at all. So if you go to the front facade, if they simplified the front facade and had the metal flue, I think it would work. You know, the materials that are the same would blend in to the metal siding. And if you go to the back facade, the scar, and the problem with the scar is that they have two volumes. Instead of the original facade, the original intention was to have one volume. And that made sense, a simple rectangular volume. And the air handling units were placed to the back of the building. And if they kept it that simple, I think it could work. I mean,
Okay, yeah, it's tricky. They were trying to, I think, break down the massing of it, but it is such a little house that I think.
yeah, but breaking it
something-
down makes it more visible.
Yeah.
Two masses shifting, simple, the massing just becomes more dominant, right?
Yeah, yep. And so I think while we do appreciate all of the effort that the applicant has gone to, I think we are not able to vote on this today, and we will give you the opportunity to think about it some more. But I think, you know, in terms of thinking about what the right shape, setbacks, and volume are, you know, maybe think about the materials and detailing a little bit, because there's been many commissioners who commented correctly that this is a very delicate, small scale building. So I think that may be another way to sort of help with the scale of the addition, because I think, you know, even an addition of 8 or 9 feet looks big on this little building. So this is challenging. I think continue to think about how you can reduce it, and then how you can articulate it in a way that makes it sort of deferential and scaled down to relate to the scale of the house in which it's proposed. So we do appreciate the effort, but I think this one's going to take some more time and more thought. So we'll take no action today, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public meeting item number 9, LPC 23-03274, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1274, lot 7504, 768 Fifth Avenue, the Plaza Hotel, individual and interior landmark. This is a French Renaissance style hotel designed by Henry J. Hardenberg and built in 1905-07, with an addition designed by Warren and Wetmore, built in 1921. Application is to replace terracotta with GFRC units at select locations. This was last presented at the public hearing of November 1st, 2022, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to and more new information about the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, proceedings are open and the applicant may speak.
Okay, so before you get started, could you click on your screen, please? And then you'll have it perfect. You'll have control of the presentation. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Michael Doyle from Madison Doyle. We're here today with Howard Zimmerman's office, HCLAE, the architect and engineers for the project. And thank you for meeting again with us. We're here to affirm our intent to do the absolute best for this important landmark. Specifically, we're requesting, as Corey laid out, the use of a substitute material for the structurally failed and removed 15th floor balcony, which I think we went through the last time. Go through these slides as we go. And with our technical team, we'll review the care of the steel that we're going to discuss, the waterproofing and the rebuild authentically of the balcony profiles in what we're proposing, the GFRC. I wanted to point out again, just for the group, that the community board saw the project and unanimously approved it, and we worked very closely with the staff and with the Landmarks Conservancy, who has the facade easement, brought them along right from the beginning. So it was nothing new or surprising, and they are behind it, and I think wrote a letter to that effect. Just to introduce our team, we have in our office Elias Katzenbachis and Nate Fitch and Howard Zimmerman. Could you introduce your office?
Thank you, Mickey. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I have Joe Nevins, director from my office. I am Howard Zimmerman, founder of Howard Zimmerman Architects and Engineers. Joe Nevins, director, and Russell Butchkowitz, project manager. Thank you, commissioners, for your time. We're here to talk about the Plaza Hotel. This team of Howard Zimmerman Architects and Engineers, Atchison Doyle Partners, Preservation Consultants, JLL owners reps, and the 4 condominiums comprising the Plaza Hotel. We're all very aware of our obligation and responsibility to maintain this jewel of a building in a more than appropriate and manner befitting such a world-renowned landmark. Our entire team feels the moral and architectural responsibility to do this right. We're not here today to ask for permission to do less. We're not here to get away with anything. We're not doing something that we are not here to try to plead economic hardship or to spend less money. We're here to ask permission, as I mentioned at our last hearing, to go on a structural diet. We want to put back everything that was removed in exactly the same detail it was originally created, but we want to do it with a quality material that is approximately 20% lighter. We would like to perform our restoration program in a less invasive manner, but achieving the same quality results. We would like to perform this restoration analogous to arthroscopic surgery as opposed to open heart surgery. Water has been corroding the structural outriggers that support the 15th floor balcony for the past 50 years or so. They extend outboard of the facade approximately 5'4" and are structurally compromised from years of water infiltration and corrosion. Essentially, the outriggers can no longer do the work they were originally designed to do. That is, to support the terracotta pieces that compromise the 15th floor balcony. To replace these steel outriggers to their original strength and capacity to support the terracotta would require us to dig deep into the building to get to the existing spandrel beam, which by its very intrusive nature would cause enormous impact to the exterior fabric of the landmark, which is something everyone wants to avoid. The existing compromised outriggers can be reinforced and restored in a less invasive manner, which can then support a lighter replacement material, GFRC. We can achieve the very high quality results by substituting GFRC in lieu of the terracotta. We plan to replicate all the individual salvaged stones of the original balcony and recreate them in an exact size, color, detail, and finish as true to the original terracotta as humanly possible. When we are done, the hidden steel will be stronger than the original steel from day one. All the elements will be properly waterproofed and sealed better than originally done with state-of-the-art waterproofing materials and detailing, and visually ending the result of an exact replication to create a new 15th floor balcony with a life expectancy of greater than 70 years. I hope you will listen to this presentation and help us restore this landmark arthroscopically and not perform open heart surgery. So the photo here, sorry, the blue color-coded outrigger beams represent the outrigger beams and that were supporting the balcony, and the green beam in the photograph is represented in the section detail outboard there. There is a purple beam inboard. That purple beam in the photograph is way inboard below and behind the existing window, which is really what the outriggers, the blue beams, are tied back to. And thus is the problem. If we have to go back to that purple beam, it will be a very invasive process to get back there and remove all the masonry to access that purple beam. In the process, this is a little deceptive because we took the 15th floor balcony down and we painted all the existing outriggers. They look very good, but they're really rotted. This was just for, we knew they would be exposed for about a year, so we had to properly waterproof them and basically paint the steel with a white Rust-Oleum, and we waterproofed the wall just so we kept all the water out of the building while we were going through this landmark commission process. Next.
So looking at the outrigger steel as one of the issues with the 15th floor balcony, as we were doing the work on it, we were looking at the steel condition. And on the left, you can see an unpainted outrigger beam sticking out that has minor section loss. It's a little rusted, but it's nothing that can't be scraped, painted, and it's relatively fine. The photograph on the right, however, you see a beam that has significant and serious section loss. And beams like this, there were 16 of them that we actually removed from the building when we were taking the balcony apart, because once they were just out on their own, there was no reason for them to actually stay in their present location. In between these two conditions, however, there are a lot of other beams that have some section loss, which is where the vertical part of the beam, the web of the beam, rusts and starts to get thin, and thus the strength of the beam as it was originally designed becomes compromised. And each beam has to be looked at as its own little engineering project, if you will. The issue with the steel weakening is that as the balcony stays the same, the steel is weaker, the balcony starts to deflect, which is bending down, and it causes, the terracotta deflects, the terracotta to crack, and it also puts a lot of stress back on the materials that are underneath the existing windows back at the building wall. So we're looking to correct this by stiffening the outriggers that suffer from section loss. And there will be some outriggers that we know we have to replace. 16 of them were removed, and so there's 16 that are going to have to be put back in the building. The issue with putting the outriggers back in the building, as Howard had mentioned, is that to get back to the beam that's buried inside the building, we'll have to remove a significant amount of material to be able to get there. The reason for this removal is that to get the beam back into the building, to the spandrel beam, is that we need to make holes so that welders can get in to remove the existing connection that is there, and then we have to put a new connection in to put the new spandrel beam in with. The problem doing this is that there's the channel that was marked in green on the previous diagram. It's physically in the way. You can't get to underneath it. You have to go in over the top of it. And for a welder to be able to get in there, he has to get up close and personal with the work so that he can ensure that the welds he's installing meet the quality criteria that we need for the load transfer. Some people would say, oh, you just dig a little hole, the welder sticks his welding rods in there and does his welding. And the problem is you'll never know if the welds are actually sufficient or not. So this is the key issue that we have, with this balcony is the question becomes, how do we keep this structurally sound and maintain it and put it back together in a way that fits the quality of the building?
So just Joe, everything that is colored on this photograph, the shades of brown and pinkish, that all represents historic fabric that would have to come out in order to access that purple beam, including the window in this picture, the window sill, the jam plinths on the side, as well as all this brown stuff in order to access that purple beam way in the back. And also, a welder has at least a 3-foot wand that has to, get to the welding spot. He has to wear a welder's helmet, which has some bulk. So it's not microscopic. It's very invasive, and he needs a lot of space just to access. Next.
So when we started investigating the issues with the balcony, we started looking into different materials. There's the original terracotta, there's precast concrete, there's resin products that are out there, and there's GFRC. So we took sample terracotta from the building, and we had other samples made to see what would basically the most close replication of the terracotta in other materials. Precast concrete is very heavy. It's heavier than terracotta. The resin product became unavailable because of issues with the supply chain. And we ultimately came down with glass reinforced concrete. It's less dense than the terracotta is. The walls of it are thinner than the terracotta, and part of that is because it is glass fiber reinforced. So it's a lighter material that is as durable, and this is what we looked at to go in back with the balcony with, and it was because of the issues with the underlying steel and the desire to not destroy and disrupt further historic fabric. Looking at the steel reinforcement, we know we've got some areas with minor section loss, which is less than 10%, that we're not going to have to do any work to. We've got moderate section loss, which is above 10 and less than 20%, which represents about 60% of the total amount of outriggers in the building. And then there's 16 beams that we know we have to replace. And so it's really the 70 outriggers that we need to repair. And that's, I would say, the crux of the matter. Once they're repaired, we have a load capacity of about 1,400 pounds per beam. Obviously, if they were replaced, we'd have a load capacity equal to what was there when the building was built. But to achieve that is a whole different kind of project than if we can repair the beams. And you can see the repair even is greater than the weight of the GFRC that would be imposed on them. And thus we have a really nice factor of safety with all this, which is one of the reasons why this would be such a long-lasting repair project. Next, please.
So, oh, sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Howard.
So this is the north facade. And if we have to, the red lines represent the area of historic fabric that we would have to remove in order to access that the purple beam, as we call it, to replace the outrigger beams in order to support terracotta. The illustration above is for GFRC. You can see the blue represents the areas, I think there were 16 outriggers that Joe Nevins outlined that are absolutely deteriorated and have to be replaced. So there is, you could see just visually, this is to depict graphically how less invasive the GFRC solution is. And that's why we kind of termed it arthroscopic surgery as opposed to open heart surgery. This is similar illustration for the east facade, which is the Grand Army Plaza or Fifth Avenue facade. And then we have on the 58th Street elevation, we have no outriggers that we have to replace if we go with GFRC. And again, the red represents the outriggers that we would have to replace if we were going to go back with terracotta. Joe?
Here, we're looking at the weights and the materials in place with 1,650 pounds represents terracotta going back on the building. We're lightening up the actual concrete slab that was the roof of the balcony in an effort to reduce the weight. Part of that was, can we reduce the weight to put terracotta back on? And it still just doesn't work out unless we go back into the area in red in this diagram, which shows what would have to essentially be dug out of the way to make room to get new outrigger beams in there. This is what, we don't really want to take out all that historic fabric to get new beams in. And, our opinion is that putting GFRC back is as quality material as the terracotta would be. Now, this is this diagram shows the weight of what the GFRC would impose. And then the photo on the right has, we basically showed steel plating going on the beams, and you'll see that the plating stops at the existing edge of the building. And this means that we'll be able to support the weights required without having to dig into the rest of the building fabric to stiffen the beams up farther. Side by side, one can see that on the left, the outrigger repair for the GFRC stops at the face of the building. And you can see there's the green beam that's underneath. And we're not having to go back to the purple beam that's on the right versus replacing outriggers where we will have to go back all the way to the purple beam, and there will be substantially additional disruption to the historic fabric of the building. And here one can see very clearly there's what would be undisturbed on the left versus what would have to be disturbed on the right in order to get back to the spandrel beam, the beam that's inside the building. This is a summary of the difference between using GFRC on the project versus terracotta. We know we have 16 beams that have to be replaced. That's a fact. Terracotta, we have 86 that we'd have to replace. The amount of brick masonry to be disturbed is significantly different. Roughly, 1,050 square foot would have to be removed additional for terracotta. And then we've got the windows that have to be dealt with, where we've got plinth blocks that would have to come out for the beams we have to replace versus plinth blocks and stone sills and windows that would have to come out to do the replacements of the outriggers in order to support terracotta. Now, This is a photograph of the sample GFRC unit we had made. Please note that the intent here was we needed to see if we could match the depth of the pattern and the texture of the terracotta. This was not a finish sample to match the actual finish of the terracotta. It was all about the texture and the feeling of it to make sure we could actually replicate the terracotta in all of its texture and design. Mickey?
Yeah, if I can just point out, this is St. Barbara's Church in Bushwick, which is a real gem of a terracotta building and was just made a landmark. And during the transition into landmark status, we worked very closely with the commission to do a significant cornice in the GFRC, and it looks very good and has supported itself very well in color and texture, and looks very important as a replacement material. Joe, if I can just mention, the original balcony had been significantly modified over the years with fiberglass and parging and concrete pieces, to the point that literally, and we have all this counted, and just like we counted every strut of the steel, it was about 10% of usable terracotta was left, but every piece of terracotta for the forming of the new shapes were taken and are stored on the site. So this was carefully done as our own experience and Howard's experience with LPC. We made sure we have all of that material.
Yeah, to summarize, at some point a lot of fiberglass work was done to this balcony. And then later on, the balcony was further repaired. Terracotta was patched and pinned and coated. So there was already a fair amount of deterioration. And when we took it apart, we made sure to basically catalog and make sure we had at least 2 pieces of every single profile and every piece on the building, so that we could have pieces to make replication from. A lot of people would just save 1 piece and say that's enough. And I usually push for more than that, because I've seen a lot of things happen on construction sites, and suddenly the piece you thought you had is gone.
And just anecdotally, the fiberglass, which is the point of our taking down the balcony, was actually in compression holding up the balcony. There's a piece of fiberglass signed by one of the installers from 1982 in magic marker. So it's been around for a while. Next. We just, these are just works that have been, the John Milosky Bank building is the one that was a significant eye opener for me, and I know the commission went through it. Next. And I'll ask Howard to wrap it up, but this is the plaza, and one of the emblematic photos we all see, both from the Fifth Avenue Grand Army Plaza side and the park. How many Christmas cards have you seen? And Law and Orders, for instance, with that in the background. Howard?
And thank you, Mickey. And this GFRC application of the 15th floor balcony only, we're trying to preserve 1,050 square feet of original historic brick masonry. It preserves 40 original terracotta jam units, and it prevents the disturbance of 20 aluminum windows and their stone sills.
So we're available for any questions, and and thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We do have a question. Commissioner Devonshire, please go ahead.
Yeah, generally the problem with terracotta is not so much with the material itself, although there weren't fabrication standards until the 1920s, and this predates that by over a decade. But the big problem is corrosion and oxide jacking of the steel that holds it in place. You didn't show any of your flashing details or any of the details that you're going to implement to keep water out of the structural system.
Commissioner, we thought that would be put presumptuous and putting the cart before the horse. We didn't want to get bogged down in details, but I assure you, my firm is very much experienced and knowledgeable in exterior restoration and waterproofing, and we will make this bulletproof in terms of waterproofing, structurally stable. We will have flashing, and I made a statement in my presentation that this will, be good for at least 70 years.
Well, that said, I think it's a well-known standard in the industry that GFRC has a performance life of 50 years. How are you coming up with those extra 20 years? Are you praying?
50 is assured, 20 is praying, and we're going to waterproof the steel so that we never have a problem at the 15th floor balcony again.
Thank you.
And flash the GFRC properly.
Okay, other questions? Okay. All right. Yes, Commissioner Lutfi, please go ahead.
So should this happen in other parts of the building? I mean, it's an old building. There must be other things that are going on there. Are you recommending, are you thinking, I mean, this is a very important building in the city. Like, is this the beginning of a gradual replacement of all of the terracotta? Or
Absolutely not. The problem here is the terracotta. The terracotta on the 15th floor balcony is projecting out of the facade and has steel required to support it. We are in fact replacing other elements of the building in repairing using terracotta. It is just because of the weight problem at the 15th floor balcony that we feel we can't use, or it'd be more destructive to use terracotta. But all those vertical purple lines in the drawings here are areas that we are repairing with terracotta. They're just more in plane with the elevation, as opposed to the 15th floor balcony, which is cantilevered off the elevation.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add to that, Howard, the intent is totally restorative. Commissioner Lefty, that's a great question, because the board has been totally on board with the fact that everything other than this 15th floor balcony is replacement terracotta, and we've been very careful that terracotta tends to be in the plane of the building and not projecting on steel strut, which has deteriorated. And just interestingly, the green canopy area at the bottom is a totally restored proposal, which will follow after the balcony of the which we've discussed with the staff, of the totally restorative, no substitute materials of any sort for the canopies, which have had a rough career, so to speak. But okay. We're not looking for replacement material anywhere else.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that.
Okay, other questions? All right, I think we can move to our discussion. I will note that we did receive a letter from the Historic Districts Council, which, as always, was shared in advance of today's meeting with the commissioners. So we'll begin this discussion, and I want to thank the applicants for coming back and giving us such a thorough and detailed explanation of the rationale behind the proposal. We got a little bit of a sense of, from the last public hearing discussion, that doing the replacement in terracotta would involve replacing more material, but I think this explanation of that has been very illuminating and helpful. So I thank you for so methodically laying this out. So, and as I said, we did have a mixed discussion last time. The commission has approved GFRC, as you pointed out in some of your other examples, on individual landmarks in discrete locations. And it is always as a concern, as Commissioner Lutfi pointed out, that it not start to be the majority of the building, but if there are discrete elements well above eye level, we have done it. And so that's what's being proposed here. And we're talking about the condition at this 15th floor balcony. And the applicants have laid out the extent of removal, ideally that it's a limited amount of work here, but that should it have to be in terracotta, they've laid out the extent of removal that would be required. So we'll have our discussion. Commissioner Devonshire, I'll ask you to start. I note that last time you did have concerns about replacing it with GFRC.
Yeah, because, well, mostly because I thought the reasoning behind it was less than appropriate. But at this point, considering and trusting that the flashing and waterproofing will be adequate, the fact that this is 15 stories above the street level makes me guardedly feel that it's appropriate. I'm certainly not a fan of, well, I'm not a fan of replacing original material with substitute materials. However, GFRC is a substitute material, as is terracotta. Terracotta was a substitute material for stone. They cheaped out and didn't use stone on this. So it's tough to argue. I'm actually a pretty big fan of GFRC. I just want to be sure that the reasoning behind it and the approach is appropriate. And I think in this case, it absolutely is. And I can approve it.
Great, thank you. All right, Commissioner Goldblum, I think you actually were comfortable with it last time, given its height and discrete placement on the building.
I love this new order because it gives me the chance to say that I agree 100% with what Michael just said. For all the reasons, the replacement nature of terracotta to begin with, the fact that it's high up. And I'll say that when we were at Jarmilovsky, it was stunning material. And I was right there touching it on the roof. So I have no question that it'll be appropriate here. I think for me, the reason to hew close to the terracotta is because it's a historic material, and the Landmarks Commission has been instrumental, I think, in reviving the industry of terracotta, which is now very thriving, and the preservation movement in general. And that's something we should be very, very proud of. So I think that in this building where they are using terracotta elsewhere, this is a good example of a conservative implementation of a alternate material.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin, I think you also were supportive last time.
Yes, I felt that the fact that it was on the 15th floor made me much more comfortable with the idea of using the terracotta. And I was somewhat worried about the loads of the terracotta. And the presentation has been very helpful in indicating that they're, trying to do the terracotta would result in a more invasive procedure that really would involve the loss of more historic materials. So that's made me feel comfortable with this as an alternative on this very high floor.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
So first, I think we need to recommend that GFRC rebrand, because there's just something in the name that doesn't help. That doesn't help it. You need to start saying glass fiber or something and be a little bit more romantic. But I do think that the applicants made a very strong case. I don't think the issue of whether it's on the upper floor and not as visible is the point. I think the case that they made, which is that there would be potential loss, if not just destabilizing of a lot of existing material, if in order to achieve the replacement of terracotta in this case. And I think that that's kind of something that needs to be weighed, and in weighing it, as the applicants have, I will agree that in this case, what would be kind of a less favorable situation, which is to replace historic material with a new material, is something we need to do, and in this case is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Yep, I agree with all of my fellow commissioners. It's appropriate.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Jefferson.
Appropriate.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I think as Adi said, the issue for me is not the floor, because that's something that people can always come in and say to us, oh, it's it's not visible from the street. And the thing that is persuasive here is the intrusiveness and the instability that exists, and the destabilization that could continue, and just it's an incredible amount of work and a process that doesn't seem to make sense under the circumstances. So I can in this instance go along with it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen.
Appropriate.
Okay, all right, so I think we have a consensus. Commissioner Devonshire, would you make the motion?
As soon as I put down my cup of tea. Oh, please. Sorry. In the matter of LPC 23-03274, the Plaza Hotel, an individual and interior landmark, an application is to replace terracotta with glass fiber reinforced concrete GFRC units. I recommend approval, finding that the replacement of select terracotta units at the 15th floor balconies, most of which are already altered with partial fiberglass replacements at the brackets, is warranted by their deteriorated condition. That the GFRC replacement units will replicate the historic terracotta units in terms of placement, dimensions, color, profiles, details, texture, and finish. That the existing structural support systems for the 15th floor balconies cannot safely support the weight of the terracotta, and upgrading the system will require extensive invasive measures affecting numerous occupied residential units and loss a large amount of additional historic masonry units. That when seen from the street, the uniform assemblies of GFRC units at the 15th floor balconies will be indiscernible from the terracotta, and the proposed work will support the long-term preservation of the building.
Sarah, we need a second.
Yeah, no, I'm muted. I'm sorry.
All right.
All right, Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, now that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next public meeting item.
Thank you.
Next item is public meeting item number 10, LPC 22-11297, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1492, lot 60, 22 East 81st Street in the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. This is a row house originally designed by Tom and Wilson and built in 1883 to 84 and remodeled circa 1977 with a new stucco facade. The application is to reclad the facade, replace windows, and modify openings. This was last presented at the public meeting November 1st, 2022. No action was taken at that time. The staff will be presenting the revisions to the proposal.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Timothy Shaw, Preservation Staff. Let's see. As Corey noted, 22 East 81st Street is a late 19th century row house that was remodeled circa 1977, which was right at the time of designation, with this current modern facade as seen on the left. The proposal was previously presented at the public meeting of November 1st, 2022, after being read into the record at the public hearing of October 25th, 2022. I will now go to the previous and current proposals. On the left was the proposal that was presented at that November 1st public meeting. And on the right is the revised proposal today. The proposal at the public meeting was for the removal of the existing cladding and windows and for the installation of a new limestone facade with new single pane wood windows within existing masonry openings at the upper floors and within new masonry openings at the bottom 2 floors. At that meeting, commissioners were generally supportive of the proposal, but most felt that the details, including window surrounds, cornice, and fenestration at the bottom floors, needed some refinement or adjustments. There was also concern from some commissioners about the use of single pane windows. In response, the architect has made the following changes. The main entrance at the east side of the ground floor will now have a projecting lintel to distinguish it from the other openings. The parlor floor windows will be taller and sit at the top of the string course between the ground and second floors. And the window surrounds string courses and cornice will have more depth and detail than previously shown. I will now show you, this can be seen a bit better, and this was the original design rendering, fairly simple and shallow, and the revised rendering, a little bit of a better rendering also, but slightly a deeper, more robust lintels and cornice and string courses. And you can also see that here in section on the left were the section details from the original proposal, and on the right are the modified details. Now you can see a deeper, larger cornice, deeper, more detailed string courses, and at the lintels. Leonard, and also just to note, the proposal is still maintaining the single pane wood windows as initially proposed. Leonardo Tamarga, the architect, is on hand if you have any specific questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions, either for Tim or for the applicant? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. I'll note that we also did receive a letter from Historic Districts Council and Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts, and those have been shared with all of you. And if there are no questions, I think we can move to our discussion. And I'm sending you all requests to unmute so that we can do that. So I think the last time we saw this proposal, there was really a sort of a question of the tension of whether this was traditional, trying to be traditional or contemporary. And that was sort of at the heart of all of the comments. And I think many commissioners were comfortable with the single pane windows if used, if the style was refined and if they related to the style. So they've made some refinements today, and I think we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Shamir Barron, I think you actually were very supportive of it last time, but now that they have refined some of the details, how are you feeling?
Well, I was in support of the previous proposal, and I don't find the new, the changes to be really refinements. So I don't quite know what to do.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Okay. And Tim, I wonder, for the purposes of our discussion, if we can have a side-by-side maybe of the previous and the new proposal. Okay. All right. I think, yes, last time you really did, you found that it was appropriate as presented, and I think talked about it being sort of a celebration of the limestone. And so I think you're feeling that some of these changes
almost detract from that.
Okay. All right, so let's see, Commissioner Chapin.
I actually kind of like the door, so to speak, I guess, but treatment, and I don't know about this second floor length of the windows, but
sort of
I
piano
think,
novelty.
using the standard of is it appropriate as opposed to which of the two is more appropriate, I think I can approve this new proposal.
Okay. It sort of draws upon those classically inspired facades in a more contemporary way. Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
Nah, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I remember this scheme and I find it virtually unimproved. I think it's still, this looks like the kind of thing that you would see as a building that we would classify as no style if they did this to it after, having stripped off all of its details in the 1940s or something, apart from the fact that it's made out of limestone, which of course they wouldn't have done. But as an elevation, it lacks any grace. It lacks any refinement. I mean, I'm a huge fan of modern stuff. I do modern stuff. This is not modern. This is not, in my opinion, acceptable as a conversant in the district, right? It either has to talk to the district in its own language or from a different language that it kind of shares proudly with its neighbors and has affinities through formal means. This is neither here nor there. I think that at the last meeting, I noted that the band coursing was, all right, let's put a line in between the two windows. Okay, that's not how classical architecture did it, and it's not how modern architecture did it. And I don't know. I just think beefing up the profiles don't change my view on it. I can't support it.
Okay, Commissioner Devonshire.
I'm not far from that opinion. I am not in support of this. This is the kind of thing that I would walk by and say, how could the LPC let that happen?
Okay. Commissioner Chen.
My antenna perked up as soon as Commissioner Devon says, how could we let that happen? I had to defer to their concerns.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi.
I mean, I have to agree, and I'm not sure I'm convinced. I think Diana said this about the size of the windows on the second floor.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
Well, if they're going to change from minimalism, a simple rhythm to the new one, then it needs more work.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson.
See, I would ask myself, how could Commissioner Devonshire let this happen? So I not appropriate.
Okay. All right. So I think that these refinements that were these adjustments, let's say, that were made to the building did not bring it in one direction or the other enough to successfully respond to the comments. And I think that same tension that we discussed last time is still here. So we'll ask the applicants to really sort of choose a direction and really fully commit to it in all of its details and proportions. Okay, so we'll take no action today and we'll move to the next and final item.
Right, the next item is public meeting item number 11, LPC 23-04180, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1384, lot 23, 829 Madison Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an altered Queen Anne style residence designed by Black & Company and built in 1885 to 86 And the application is to alter the facade, install storefront infill, and replace roofing. This was last presented at the public hearing of December 13th, 2022, and no action was taken at that time. The staff will present the revisions to the proposal after we open. Oh, actually, we don't need to open the proceedings. The staff will present.
All right.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Leanne Pollock, Preservation Staff, presenting on behalf of the applicant. This item is 829 Madison Avenue. At the December 13th, 2022 public hearing, the Commissioners reviewed this application for alterations to the base of the building, including installing storefront infill and replacing roofing. The Commission was supportive of the use of substitute roofing material and was generally supportive of the changes at the base of the building and the configuration and details for the storefront infill. However, the Commission had mixed opinions regarding how the new building base should relate to the upper floors. Some Commissioners felt that the facade design should be more closely connected with the upper floors, while others felt that it should be designed to have a greater contrast with the upper floors. Commissioners suggested that the applicant re-examine this relationship, including restudying the facade cladding, height and material of the stone base, positioning of the cornice between the second and third floor, and the amount of brick above and below that cornice, and the proportions at the corner brick pier. Before I summarize the applicant's proposed changes, I wanted to explain some updated information that the architect has received since the public hearing. The team completed a 3D scan of the existing building, and it revealed some discrepancies from the building elevations that they had been working from. So here you can see their initial Madison Avenue rendering existing conditions on the left and the building per the updated scan on the right. So some changes to the roof pitch, to these third floor windows, to the size and placement of the dormer. So they've adjusted overall to account for that 3D scan. The middle image shows the design they previously presented to the Commission in December with the pre-scan rendering. On the right is their proposed revised design incorporating the updated scan information. I'm going to walk through the specific changes that they've made to the ground floor in a future slide. Similarly, this slide contrasts the pre and post scan existing condition renderings. Note differences in window size at the third floor, the chimney, and the roof slope. Here's a comparison of the previously proposed East 69th Street elevation on the left and the current proposed on the right, adjusted per the 3D scan. The applicant has proposed the following changes to address the Commissioner's comments across both facades. The first proposal is to raise the height of the stone base slightly at the facade portions and at the bulkhead areas, lowering slightly at the infills to show kind of a greater distinction between these two. They also lowered the cornice element so that there's more brick between the cornice and these third floor windowsills. They've removed the spandrel panel that was previously proposed at the top of the storefront opening, allowing them to lower that opening and retain some brick underneath the cornice between the cornice and the infill openings. And they've also adjusted the locations of the masonry openings on the street facade to better relate to the openings above. Specifically on the Madison Avenue facade, the new design also features a narrower brick pier at the corner where the storefront has been adjusted the size to better align with the upper floor windows. And the infill framing was also adjusted to better reflect the rhythm of the fourth and fifth floor window openings while still accounting for the existing building structural constraints. Again, at the East 69th Street facade, the locations of the three narrow openings on this side were adjusted so that the two openings that are related to the retail use on the interior were more closely aligned with the above openings and closer to the corner. And then there's a wider brick pier, and then the narrow opening for the residential use above was set slightly further to the side to provide some differentiation between the storefront and the residential entrance, and also reflecting somewhat more the irregular spacing of the windows at the upper floors. As a reminder, the base design is constrained by existing structural members as shown in red in this overlay with the current proposed design. The proposed materials are largely unchanged with the exception of the granite base. They've proposed to go with a slightly lighter, more gray coloration in an effort to address some of the commission's comments about that material. And the details for the infill are also largely the same. They've just been adjusted to reflect the new configuration at the door with the metal side panel, which is concealing one of the existing structural elements at that building base. This concludes the presentation, and Maxwell Powell from Buyer Blinder Bell is here on behalf of the owner and is also available to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leanne. And I'll just note for the record that Vice Chair Bland has recused on this item. He hasn't been present at all this afternoon. Okay, so commissioners, do we have any questions for either Leanne or for the architect? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. We did also get letters again from Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts and HDC on the revisions to this application. So I think last time we saw this, I think most commissioners felt this was very close, but that it did need some refinements. And in particular, we pointed out the height of the base, the granite base, the proportions, particularly at the corner pier, and the sort of cornice detail between the base and the upper floors. And in addition, I think with the changes based on the scan, many of the proportions are now actually articulated and represented differently, which also I think sort of makes it look responsive to the commissioner's comments. So we'll begin our discussion. I think Commissioner Chen, would you like to start this one? You were supportive last time, but felt that they certainly could make suggestions based on the others, make revisions based on the other commissioners' suggestions.
Yeah, and I think they have done that. I think that the refinement has been done. I recall my comment was about the base. And I think this is a handsome corner building. So I'd love to hear what the rest of the commissioner have to say.
All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
Hold on. Am I wait? Oh, I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Yeah. So I also think that they did a very nice job refining the base. And then also adding that bulkhead at the bottom. I think the question for me is, and this is, just something I'd actually like to hear what the other commissioners think, if they think it's even, should the base be color-wise in coloration? Should it match what's above it? And if it doesn't, should there be more of a difference in the color? Meaning, should it be a gray and speak to the roof? Or I don't know, because in looking at some of the examples where something similar has been done, there's been, sometimes the applicants have gone straight down to the street level with the same color, and sometimes they've made dramatic changes. So that would be my only question that I'm interested in hearing about. Otherwise, I think they've done a very nice job.
Okay, and maybe I can start with it and then others can chime in as they give their comments. But, on Madison Avenue, these row houses were altered in many different ways in the early 20th century when the stoops were removed and the commercial was introduced at the lower floors. And so historically, there was a variety of cladding material found. sometimes it did bring the same material down, sometimes it didn't, sometimes it was stucco, sometimes it wasn't very good quality material. So I think that and in fact, our Madison Avenue master plan, which allows for staff level approval, allows for a variety of materials at the cladding at the base if you're replacing non-historic cladding. And the one condition is that it be consistent through that 1 or 2 story base. So I think that the material that would fit within the spirit of those Madison Avenue rules. But I think if your question is that will it look like a mistake? Will it look like it's supposed to be matching and it doesn't quite match? And so maybe people can address that.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think,
all it is.
yeah. I think for me, I think it's a different enough brick, but we'll go ahead and have a discussion. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, the articulation of the base is clear. So the upper portion has a different window configuration in proportion than the base. And the base works very well. For one particular reason, it works really well for me is that they dropped it below the sill of the second floor window or third floor window. Yeah. And that space along has made it work much better.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Commissioner Gustafson.
I guess I'll start with Jeannie's issue. I think that I agree with you, Chair Carroll, that the difference in the color is sufficient between the two. And I think the small improvements worked very, very well. I think the bigger issue is how much change there's been over the existing and how wonderful that change is. But I do agree the tweaks are very, very good. I think I probably would have approved it in its original condition as well.
Okay, thank you. I think it was very close last time. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Yes, I think all of the changes that they've made based on our comments and going back and reworking some of these elements, but also looking at the elevations after they had adjusted and gotten the right, scans to reflect the right elevations, probably made them look at it more carefully. Yeah. So I think all of it is very good, including the increased in height base of granite in the color that they're proposing, I think is fine and appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah. I agree that all of the changes they have made are helpful. And I think that the color at the bottom is appropriate. So I can approve it as presented.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
I generally agree. I think that the improvements are subtle but significant and that it's appropriate. The only suggestion I would make is that the 3 tall windows on the side street, the space between the second and the third, even though there's a rationale for it, I don't think anybody will perceive that rationale. And I would just suggest that they make that equal to the 3, so that at least when you're on the streetscape, you'll kind of get that relationship. But otherwise, I think it's appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Devonshire.
Appropriate changes. I can approve it.
Okay. All right. So I think Commissioner Goldblum, I like your suggestion, but I do think we have enough to approve it as is, and applicants can think about that some more if they'd like to. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and make a motion to approve as is. And Commissioner Chen, would you make that motion?
Be delighted to, Sarah.
Okay.
In the matter of LPC 23-04180, 829 Madison Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District. The application is to alter the facade, install storefront infill, and replace roofing. Noting the building's style, scale, materials, and details among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. Also noting that the Upper East Side Historic Destination Reports identifies Madison Avenue as a unique commercial thoroughfare that has responded successfully to changing needs and uses over time. And a master plan for storefront changes was established to ensure the continued presence of stylish storefronts undergoing regular change to keep up with contemporary design trends. and that the base at this building was modified with storefronts circa 1950, which was subsequently altered prior to the building's designation. I recommend approval, finding the work at the commercial base will eliminate unsympathetic alteration that detract from the significant architectural features of the building without causing the removal of any historic fabric. That the scale of the proposed storefront openings, featuring large openings at Madison Avenue facade at the corner bay of the East 69th Street facade, and closely spaced narrow openings at the eastern portion of the East 69th Street facade, will maintain a rhythm which relates to corner storefronts on Madison Avenue, to the window opening the upper floors of the building, and to the residential scale of the side street, while working within the building's existing structural constraints. That the design maintains transparency at the commercial base, which is a significant feature of the streetscape. That the configuration of the storefronts, featuring a granite bulkhead, textured transom panels, and horizontal divisions, will recall the historic separation between the first and second floors, thereby retaining the rhythm and scale of the two-story storefronts that characterize the streetscape. That the use of a simple darker red brick cladding at the lower floors with contrasting stone at the base wall reflect the typical historic visual distinction between the altered first two floors and the more stylistic detailed masonry at the upper stories in a complementary and contemporary manner. That the installation of a potential GFRC cornice between the second and third floor will recall the historic cornice feature and provide a visual termination for the commercial base. And the brownstone finish will further harmonize the design of the commercial base with the upper stories. That only a minimal amount of the historic slate roofing is present, a non-visible portion of the roof. That the proposed fall slate shingles will approximate the historic slate in terms of dimensions, layout, and finish. Therefore, the use of substitute roofing material will not detract from the historic character of the building. And the proposed work at the building base will enhance the site, the Madison Avenue streetscape, and the Upper East Side Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second the motion?
Second.
All right. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Right, so that's approved, and that concludes our public hearing and public meeting today. Thank you all for your hard work